So before you can see one of my many spears, and I'm about to take the spear head off because the rivet is so bent and wasn't fastened through to the other side. So this spear needs riveting back on. But before we do that, and here's the spear itself, it's very rusty. We're going to de-rust it. So, and I've already de-rusted one of my axes, clean that up. So this is the side of the channel which you don't always see and which I've not always been brilliant on, because I'm not fundamentally reenacting in the sense of going to events. I am a at-home hobbyist, and that was because I was a carer. So I've got some sandpaper and I'm just going along and just trying to remove as much of the rough I can, because you do want to try to get your axes and your spearheads looking shiny and rust free, especially if you do intend to use them for combat. And it's a very nice, satisfying job to do, and I love it when you see the rust coming off. And then I've got a cloth, I can wipe it a bit and go back. You see where I've got to do more work, and I've got a wooden block if I want to use a wooden block. That's more for the fine work. So let's continue this, and then later in the video I'm going to demonstrate how we actually rivet and fasten a spearhead onto a shaft, because these are the jobs that you have to do. You have to maintain your kit, and I've got too much kit to maintain at times. And I used to have some more spears, but I lent them to a group and they had a lot of stuff stolen, and I lost 4 or 5 of my big spears I had. You know, £200 worth of kit I lost. And I think there's a moral there, is never lend stuff to people. Now some people will be saying, well, Raggy, they didn't have sandpaper. Well, we know they had the ability to get leather and bond fine sand onto leather. So they had a equivalent of it, but not like today's modern sandpaper. And I could cheat, I could use, you know, something mechanical to do this, but and it's getting there. You do end up with rusty hands, it's a part of the job, but it's well worth doing. You've got to clean the edges as well. So go down there a few times, and at the moment I'm using 80 grit sandpaper. You go on this side. It's just about getting down to it, getting down and pressing hard with your finger and just working your way along. You know, getting the rust off. And it's definitely going to be improved. I can put a bit of spray on as well, which does help the process. So already that's looking better than what it was. So let's concentrate on the little knobbly bit. Now, I do get a lot of comments over the years. People are saying, well, why does your spear not have a point? And why does it have a knobbly bit? Well, that is there so we can use them in combat, so that I can hit somebody without hurting somebody. So it's a health and safety aspect, and you must have it on your combat spear. This is a hand forged spear. And at some point, I'd really love to invest and actually buy some pattern molded spears with some nice inlay. Because at some point this year, when I get my car back on the road, I can't afford to drive at the moment. I'm going to probably look to join a local group and actually get back into the actual hobby of reenacting. And then because I've been away for so long, because I've not reenacted for quite a few years, I'm probably slightly outdated with some of the information and what's correct and what's not correct. Like 20 years ago, everybody used to wear sea boot, which is a tall ankle boot, but now we don't wear them apparently because there's no evidence. So things do change. So it'd also be good from my perspective to pick up more information and to learn from the mistakes I've made, which there are one or two. Nobody's perfect. It's just a matter of keep grinding away, keep working at it. You get to the point where it feels nice. So we need a bit more down here. So we'll go for this. This is my disorganised little work table made from pallets. So when you're doing it, if you can still keep seeing rust coming off, then you know you've got more to do. So that's getting there. This is a job normally you do probably twice a year. At the end of the season, or you may do it as you do your battle reenactment events, you may make sure that they're clean in the first place. But as long as you keep them oiled, they'll be fine. But these have been sitting around for a long time and never really been used for combat since Egger was alive. And Egger wasn't really massively into combat by the time he got to his age because he's done 30 years of it. So it was a very rare thing to try to encourage Egger to do some fighting. And I'd love to actually do some combat with Tirk here. And I think that'll be quite fascinating that we'll try to do in the future. So let's just give that a wipe. We'll give it a bit of a spray. Because when you spray it, you can also see the darker aspects of where you got to work as well. But that's not too bad actually. So what we're going to do now, just give that a wipe. And we'll go to the back end of the socket and give that a going over. It's just a matter of getting your elbow grease and getting a bit of effort onto it. I could put it in a vice and then kind of go around it as well. We'll demonstrate that in a minute. But for the meantime, we'll just get rid of the meat of the wood. And this spearhead has probably not been off the spear for probably 20 years or more. I've certainly owned it for about 20 years, and it's never been off whilst I had it. It's just that over time, the rivet has just deteriorated, and whoever put the rivet on didn't do a very good job, not to my standard. And it should have standards when it comes to your kit. Always listen to what your fellow reenactors say. They say, well, if you do that, if you did this, that will improve it. Because a lot of the older reenactors have that experience from a lot of time and years of doing the hobby. So as you can see over here, I've got a vice. I've already found 2 suitable nails for the rivet. So we're going to plonk this over here like this. Just fasten it in. Make sure it's tight. And then I can do this. This is a far more effective way. I'm getting more pressure. So don't forget the Saxons and the Vikings would also have this trouble. So, probably if you're you lived in a long house, you had children, you may pass this job to your children to do, or your teenage children, because as a warrior and as a man running a small farm, you've got other jobs to do which are more important. And then I can do it from underneath as well. If you're doing this inside, I would wear a mask because you don't want to breathe the dust in. But this is well ventilated being outside. And I could use an angle grinder. A lot of people do that if they've got a lot of bad luck. But I think that's cheating. So we're going to fold this over so we get a smaller section for this thick. We're going to give it a spray. So hello, I'm still here filming. And I must say it's really nice and warm today, which is nice. So I definitely want where my hole is for my rivet, I want that to be very clean. I want to try to do this section down here a bit, because there's still quite a little bit of rust there. And I've already had a go already off camera, but I thought I'd film some on camera for you. So that's definitely improved. But we've got a bit of rust down here, so I need to be a bit more specific and get my finger onto that. Need a bit of fingering work. We'll swap over to another bit, the sandpaper, which is fresh. And then we'll also do a bit of this on the blade. And then we're going to undo the vise and swap it round. We need a little bit on this end here. And it's better to do it by hand rather than an angle grinder, because you will get a lot of angle grinder marks. So if it's really, really rusty, I would start it with the angle grinder and finish it off by hand. And at some point, when I get myself a mop on a wheel, I can polish these up and have it really shiny, which I'd love to do. But that's a job for another day. So I've got to concentrate on this bit down here. And I don't like to do this in my biking clothing because I will get dusty and I will get rust on me. So I think it's just common sense to have some old clothing. So that has now really improved it to the point where I may get away on camp and if it got inspected by Master at Arms, they may say, yeah, that needs more cleaning, or they may say, no, that's fine, but just try to get it cleaner in the future. So always listen to your Master at Arms. So in the next part of the video, I'm going to get the shaft. And I noticed one thing on my shaft, I've got a little crack here, and I've got a slight bit of woodworm, but I think it's old woodworm. It's only like 3 holes. So it does pay when you store your items, you know, store them in a house or somewhere dry. I think it was quite interesting what Martin the Belfast Viking says, because he stores his spears at the back of his bed. But I've also saw another comment saying store them on top of your mantle for your curtains. It's another great place. And then the most important thing is that when you put it back together, and make sure, if I did it this way, it's wrong, the holes don't match up. So it's got to be on this way round, and I can see the light through the holes. And then I'm going to get this nice steel nail. I'm going to slightly grind it off. It's got a little bit of play. I don't know whether this one is slightly better, but it's galvanised. That one's looser. So for this, I'm going to use this nail, and I'm going to leave about 5mm sticking out. And then on the next stage, we're going to go down the garden and I'll demonstrate how I rivet a spearhead on my shaft. So I'm now sitting in front of a Viking medieval anvil I made many years ago. I've got 2 or 3 of these, and I've got my spear, and I've also got my nail or my rivet. Now I've seen people do these where they'll get the cutting disc on a grinder and get it dead hot, and then put it in quickly, and then make the rivet head as it's hot, and that's really effective. Because if I had my forge, I could heat the end up so it's glowing a nice red colour, and that would really help the process. But you can do this cold. You also got to look out for the fact that if your nail or rivet is too loose, it could start to bend in the middle and it will distort the rivet. So you also got to be careful of that as well. So the first thing we do, we'll knock this through. I've got 2 hammers. I've got an authentic Viking one and a ball peen. Now the reason why I like a ball peen, I know it's not authentic, is because I can get around the edge of the rivet and therefore give it a nice looking edge. Because what you don't want your rivet head to be sharp. And you also got to make sure that when you do rivet it, it's solid on the anvil. And this may be slightly tall. I may need to grind a bit off, but we'll have a go. So I'm just knocking it gently. And I'm just working it way round. And the reason why I'm not going at the back of the hammer, because I want control of what I'm doing. This is when you really need 2 people to do it and give you a hand. That's not too bad so far, but it's a little bit sharp. You don't want a sharper edge, so it still needs more work. Let's try it with the authentic hammer. This is a copy from the Mastermere. That's done a nice job, that has, as it lands on the floor. So, and then you check it, you make sure it's solid, you make sure it's not loose. So I'm going to go back to the ball peen just a bit more. But then I'm going to flick it over. Because I also want to make the other nail end look like it's being hammered. And there you go. So we now have a new rivet. That's the nail head. That's the rivet side. I can just slightly sandpaper it down to get rid of any edges, and that will stay on there for years and years and years. And if I want a little bit more to make it a little bit tighter, so we'll go back. So I'm just going to smack this hard a couple of times. Yeah, that's roll firm, that is. And that'll stay on there for a few decades at least. So that is how we rivet on a spearhead. And I hope you've enjoyed this little bit of a crafting behind the scenes video, which I'm planning to do a bit more of. And this is just a square block, and it's just been tapered off. And at some point, I'm going to convert this log into a new log holder until I can find a more natural wooden. This is pine, so I want to find a good log of oak at some point with a wool, and then make a new holder for it. This one's done me well over the years. It's probably 20 years old, but at some point it's cracking down here, and it won't last forever, and it does need a clean. So, how to rivet a spear in the shaft. Marvellous.